Hi everyone, this is Bely. As a Venezuelan journalist, I feel a deep responsibility to raise awareness about the severe humanitarian crisis in Venezuela. Since the presidential elections held on 28 July, where Edmundo González was elected, the dictatorship has intensified its repression. They've launched the so-called Operation Knock Knock, targeting political leaders, activists, and even journalists, sending them to the notorious El Helicoide prison. Arbitrary arrests were skyrocketed, with people, including teenagers, detained merely for opposing the regime via WhatsApp messages. Remember, these individuals are not even allowed to vote. Stay informed and engaged as we continue to shed the light on the crisis. But for now, let's listen to this interview. I'm extremely happy today because today we have one extraordinary guy. He's Venezuelan. He's from the state that I'm from, which is Mérida. And one of the most amazing things that he has done, he has been working in the Kingdom of the Apes, Spider-Man. I still can say that, across the Spiderverse. And you also work with Far From Home. You work with Avatar, The Way of the Water, and well, you have worked in many other different films
shows.
And yes, exactly. So tell me everything about yourself. First of all, I know already where you're from, but I want to know everything about your life back in Nueva Bolivia. Something that I wanted to say, I don't know if you remember this, but one of the most amazing things that I remember from Mérida is when I was walking down the streets and there were San Benito, people that were, drumming the tambores, and you have to, especially if you're a woman, you have to dance and you have to give some cash or notes that you have. So I wanted to know if you have something similar.
Yeah, actually, no. Yeah, I remember San Benito is a dark-skinned saint. To me, when I was a kid, it was shocking because most of the saints I saw, on the church or in general, they had white skin. So when I saw a black-skinned saint, to me, it was, was shocking. It was great. And actually, one of my siblings, because I think his name is San Isidro.
That's someone else.
That's someone else. Well, one of my siblings, her name is Isid. But yeah, I remember the San Benito parties.
Yeah, once when I was really young, my mom, she's a doctor, and we travel around Mérida, different towns. And I remember that San Benito is massive all around Mérida, so I wanted to know if that's something good also in Nueva Bolivia. I understand that Nueva Bolivia, because of the part of it is hot. And people always think that Mérida is super cold, that I really hate because people don't understand their own country. So can you tell me what is Nueva Bolivia and what stands this town out of the rest?
To me personally, my grandma was living there, so I had family there. I remember with my older brother, he's 2 years older, we used to go around the small town doing whatever we wanted. There is a river, it's a fast river. It's a Torondoy, I think it's the river. And we love to go around that area. It's kind of dangerous, but that's the thing with you are that young that you don't know about many dangers, but at the same time, you're happy just going around. So I think that was that was cool.
So what were you doing there? I had a river behind my flat. The name was Albarregas.
Yeah, that one I don't remember. This one we used to think we like to go to fish, and we would go to fish, but we never fish anything. Like we were kids, so
I see.
But it was an experience. It's a bonding process with my brother. So that was cool.
What about the production of Los Andes?
Oh yeah, well. Yeah, it's that's one of the biggest things, and I forgot about it. Is it like a factory? It was not that close to where I live, but yeah, I remember people coming out of from there after work, and yeah, the products were even more common than everywhere because the factory was there, and yeah, I remember the products, the yogurts from there. So yeah, it was cool.
All right, now that we understood everything about your childhood, let's say, what happened when you moved to Guatire? You mentioned that on different interviews that you moved to Guatire, and there is when you basically started your career or your dream.
Oh no, I mean there is a big gap in that story, and it's we didn't move to Guatire right away. We moved a lot. That's something that changed me as a kid. In general, I think we moved like 13 times in total, because we moved to the capital, then we moved to the coast, which is La Guaira, then we moved to Barquisimeto, and then we moved to the Aragua state. So we moved a lot.
My grandma, they actually, I mean, my grandparents, they live in the UK when my mom was born, and then they moved back to Maracay, Limón, actually, and then they moved to Mérida, and then I was born.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have to go to Maracay and El Limón to pick up my high school diploma.
Are you from El Limón? No way.
No, I'm not from there. I have to go there. To pick up my high school diploma. So yeah, it was tricky to go there because I was living in Caracas at that point. So yeah.
I see. All right, perfect. What about the movie magic, or la magia del cine, how we call it? You mentioned before that you love it.
Yes, I think that's one of the earliest memories for me related to movies and how movies are made, or anything related to what's behind the camera. And it's a Discovery Channel, I believe. And me and my siblings will love to fight about what was made with practical effects and what was made with CGI. And we didn't know anything, but we were just, being kids.
But I wanted to know, when did you said that you actually can do something like visual effects? Because were you drawing before? Were you good at plastic artist? Or
I always like drawing, and I always like taking apart electronics. I like to take them apart, but not putting them together. That's not on my list. So I always like drawing, especially Dragon Ball Z characters. I was basically raised me.
Of course, yeah. Televen.
Yeah, on Televen. And something I hated from Televen is that at some point they run out of episodes, so they have to start from the beginning, and that was horrible. To me as a kid, that was one of the worst things ever.
Everyone is always complaining about that.
Yeah, I think that happens from talking to my friends from other countries. They told me the same, that it was other kids have the same issue. So yeah, I think drawing and I always like electronics and computers. Now, I had my first computer when I was like 18. I never had a personal computer until around that age. I think that slowed me down a little, but yeah.
But did you have like community, like your house, the family computer you had?
No. And that's the thing. It's something that is hard to explain to some people here. Like, I have a friend, he's a Canadian Korean, he's a really big fan of Star Wars, right? And me personally, I would love to be a fan of Star Wars, but I'm not, because I saw Star Wars when I was older. And the reason is, when you are from a humble family, stuff that seems simple, like, just watching Star Wars or going to the theater, that stuff doesn't happen, So my point is that there was a lot of stuff that I was not aware that existed when I was a kid, when I was growing. So that's why I never, had access to those things until I grew up. Now, I remember, have this memory from a friend of my family. He had like a cyber cafe or something like that. Yes. And there was a game that then years later I knew what the name it was, and it was the Prince of Persia.
Yes, I love it.
I think that the animations are rotoscoped. I remember seeing that game, and that's the thing with my memory. I remember a lot of things. Like, I have a really good memory about certain things, but other things, like, it's gone. Like, it's gone.
Okay, so actually I wanted to address something that you were mentioning or talking, is the Venezuelan situation. So obviously, because actually it doesn't matter how much money you have in Venezuela, at a certain point things change for everyone. For example, in your particular experience, you had to, when you were living in Guatire, you had to wake up at 3:30 a.m. and take the bus to go to Caracas and to work there. Can you tell me a bit about that and address this issue?
It was really rough, and the reason why I ended up living in storage literally is because of that. So basically, from Guatire to Caracas is really quick if there is no traffic. But after a certain hour, the traffic is massive, and it can take you like 2-3 hours, depending on how bad it is. So I have to wake up super early. We live on a slum, basically. It's a really bad area. But something about living in those areas is that if you mind your own business, you will be fine. Of course, there is a dangers of lost bullet and stuff like that. But in general, you're kind of safe, quote. So the reason I have to wake up so early is because I have to take one bus to the terminal, and then from the terminal take a big bus to Caracas, and from there take another small bus to where I study, because it was a study work thing that basically for year and a half you study and then you work on that company. So yeah, I mean, that's a sacrifice that I had to make, and to me, I didn't have many options. It was what it was, and I just went through it. After some point, my body, I mean, I was around 18, 17. I had to stop because doing that is just like the toll on your body is massive. Through a friend, I found a place where to sleep, which was a storage for like sound equipment. And yeah, I didn't have a kitchen. The bathroom was like what in this part of the world is called half a bathroom, basically. So no shower. So it was rough.
I don't understand. What did you say? Sorry.
Which part?
About the bathroom.
So basically, here in Canada, for example, there is something called half a bathroom, and it's basically a bathroom that only has a toilet, for example, and the sink. So that's what half a bathroom is. So that's what I had. Didn't even have a place to shower, no kitchen. There was a microwave, but yeah, basically I stayed there on the weekdays, and on the weekends I tried to go home and wash my clothes and then go back through the same process. It was definitely a rough experience.
But the good thing about that is that once you move in, you're used to changes. So, for example, in Venezuela, when I was living with my family, we didn't have water because obviously that's something that is happening in Venezuela. It doesn't matter how much money you have, you will not have water because you have these kind of limitations. But once I moved to the UK, I'm stronger than someone else because I have these tools and these skills from these kind of challenges that we pass. So that's something kind of positive somehow.
Yeah, I believe the same to an extent. It definitely makes you stronger in one way or another. It makes you more adaptable, and that's a clash of culture that I face in here.
Yeah,
especially with my Canadian-born friends. When we go camping, for example, we are super flexible. Like we adapt to anything. They like things to be more safe, And that's just a general idea. But basically, yeah, it makes you stronger to an extent.
Now, can you tell me a bit about that experience when you bought your first quemadita, let's say? You mentioned that you were walking on these kind of boulevards where they were selling these pirates CDs. That is pretty common in Venezuela. It's not as illegal in other countries, to be honest. And you bought Maya because they had this Gollum, I think that is called, from the Lord of the Rings. So can you explain me about this situation?
Yeah, I mean, before that, I was tinkering with design software, just learning what I can, and just especially finding the portable ones, because I didn't have a computer, so I have to find the portable versions of those software. Then I was just walking, and these people, they have all type of software and movies and weird stuff. And when I saw Gollum, and I'm a fan of the Lord of the Rings, I was flipping like, yeah, I'm gonna do a Gollum. So I bought it. Cracking, I mean, at that point, that's the only way to use a software like that. You need to crack it, because Maya at that point was probably around $8,000. I'm not even sure. So cracking the software was really hard, like really, really hard, because I didn't have internet either. So I was focused that, yeah, I'm gonna do a Gollum after I installed this. So I installed Maya, opened Maya, and it's a big shock on how complex it was.
What happened, or how long did it take from that first moment when you started with the softwares to the point when you start working with Oruga Films?
I cannot tell you how long it was. I definitely don't have a time frame, but it was kind of quick. And then when I say quick, I will say like around a year and a half, probably. I'm not sure. It could be a little longer. I am giving you a ballpark. Definitely, I definitely have that issue with time. But the one of the reasons is that the standards in there, they were lower, so it was easier to find a job. Now, with that same portfolio I have at that time, I will not be able to find a job on a company or a studio from another country. So the standards were lower, and at that point they were lower too.
But was the earnings lower as a normal, what you were doing before, something like carrying on instruments and stuff like that? Was that payment lower than what you were?
No, it was actually better. And I remember one of the, I think that's a key moment in my life when I realized, okay, I can make a living of this for now. And yeah, it was definitely, I don't remember the numbers because, you know, with the currency conversions we have there and all the changes they did to the currency, it's hard to know, to track how much it was, but it was definitely good enough for me to support my family and myself. It was better than the minimum salary, for example.
That's really good. Yeah. Okay, you mentioned that you face a kind of skepticism because of your family were not really convinced that you were pursuing an artistic career. Obviously, because if you're coming from a humble family and then you decide, I want to be a hippie. How did you overcome that? I'm assuming that it was the first time when you could pay your mom appendicitis, but can you explain me that situation?
It was tough because for our parents' generation, it's hard for them to understand that there is a lot of stuff you can do with a computer for them, you know, or most of them. That generation, at some point, you know, my mom used to joke, "Oh, I will exchange my artist son for a normal one that, you know, goes and works." So most of my life, I always chased the belief because it was a belief. It was not a fact for me because I didn't know if it would work. But I always chased the belief that if I have a good portfolio and a good demo reel, I will find a decent job. So it was not easy. And something I noticed the other day, I went to the Circus of Soleil here in you know, they're from Quebec. They're amazing. And I was thinking, because most of them are kids and they are like in great shape and they do crazy stuff. I was impressed, and I was thinking that it might sound cheesy, but I was kind of proud of them, even though I don't know them. Because imagine you go and you tell your parents, "Hey, I want to work in a circus." You know, that's not something that any parent is gonna take easily, or most parents will take easily. So I believe everyone that chases this career, they're in one way or another, they want to do art, and doing art without money is not easy.
Totally. But you made it. You made it possible.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about that situation when you realized that you can actually do something with Oruga Films? You had like 2 weeks working there and suddenly you paid something for your mom?
Yeah, it was crazy because basically I started and I was just working and my mom got appendicitis, you know, when that weird thing, part of the body goes crazy. And thankfully the insurance kicked in just like 1 day ago before or 2 days before. It was right there. It was a critical situation because getting that type of surgery back home in a public hospital is definitely not something you want to do. It's risky, right? Anything can happen. So there are many things I owe to what I do, you know, to 3D and animation. There is a lot of people behind what I do. The software engineers that did Maya, the people that make tutorials, because even though I learn by myself, I have to watch tutorials one way or another, right? I am who I am, or I do what I do thanks to the internet. Literally through the internet, I became what I am.
Like many others. For example, I started editing videos with Nicolas Sepp Films. I don't know if you watch them. I love him.
I think I heard their name. Yeah.
He's amazing. Yes. All right. Now, well, let me address something really important quick before we carry on. You mentioned that it's quite dangerous if you have a kind of surgery in a public security system in a hospital. It's not because of the doctors. It's really important to clarify that. It's because of everything that you need, even the electricity, something can happen. So yeah, you mentioned that anything can happen, that whatever thing can happen, but it's important to clarify that it's not because of the doctors or that we don't have qualified people. It's just because we don't have qualified implements or instruments. We don't have enough money because it's not a poor country, but it's a poor system.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, and that's true. The doctors that come from Venezuela, they're really good, as far as I know, in general. And that's another culture shock for me here in Canada is that the universal healthcare is not bad. It's actually, you won't go broke if you got super sick, but it's not that personal. I remember in Venezuela, doctors it was more personal. You felt like someone was actually taking care of you. So that's a culture shock for me. I just adapt to it, but I definitely miss the doctors from Venezuela and the way they work.
Cute. All right. So you were working in Oruga Films and you had an amazing time there because obviously you earn enough money to do certain things and you realize that you can actually have a career out of your artistic life. But tell me that major boost on your career when you start working with Carlos Baena on La Noria?
Yeah, I mean, really quick, what happened to Oruga is just the economic situation went bad, so they have to start downsizing. I actually still don't know if they're still operating, but before working in La Noria, it was a long process of working in different places, mostly as a freelancer. Before being able to catch the attention from someone like Carlos, I had to go through a process of learning and improving, and that took years. It's a lot of time for me to be able to be good enough to be noticed by someone that works in the industry, and someone as Carlos, because to an extent he's a legend on the animation industry. He's one of the founders of Animation Mentor, and he's a really cool dude. As a director, I love working with him because he knew what he wanted. And sometimes some directors, they're not that sure, they don't know what they want. Carlos always he knows what he wants. So that's cool. La Noria, basically, they posted a teaser and they were saying that they were looking for someone to help them with cloth and hair. And I always loved that area of 3D in general. And I always was out of curiosity because all what I know is curiosity. It's curiosity of doing this and doing that. I sent them what I had in my portfolio related to that. And they like, at the beginning, I was working for free because that project, that's how it worked. That project was to do something as a community. And I really appreciated it. Thankfully, and that's one of the things I admire about Carlos. He had another job while doing La Noria, and from his own salary, he paid me monthly. I don't remember how much it was. I was living in Ecuador at that time, but for me, it was enough to focus only on La Noria. The sacrifices the people did to make La Noria help other people to not only to pay the bills and all stuff like that, but also to grow as artists.
Where can we find La Noria?
There are many ways to get it. I think the easiest way is just Googling La Noria. That's LA space NORIA, and you will find different, because right now the short film is public, so you will find it everywhere. There are many pages YouTube channels that they polish it by themselves, and they have the Vimeo. La Noria has a Vimeo channel too, so it's super easy to find.
So about this that you mentioned that you were in Ecuador, I'm slightly confused because in IMDb it says that you worked in 2017 with The Mummy and the Justice League, and then you were working as a hair and costume technical lead. But what about La Noria? So I don't understand the line.
So what happened is that we moved to Ecuador, I think it was around 2014, and we were living there around for close to 2 years, I believe. And we arrived to Canada in 2016, October. That was to work with MPC, the moving picture company. But I still was working in La Noria after I arrived to Canada. So it was a still going process. Because remember that La Noria took, I think it was between 7 and 9 years to be made.
Wow, that's why it's so detailed.
Yeah, it's a passion project that, it took a long time. So when I was working in MPC, I was still working on La Noria.
Now that we clarify everything about La Noria, can you tell me about what it was to work with MPC, or what it is to work with MPC?
MPC, to me, it was great. I had a great experience. I think the best part of MPC is the people. The people I met there, I made great friends. People from everywhere, literally everywhere. To me, it was great because I had access to many cultures, many, especially food. So that was cool. MPC sadly has a bad reputation in the industry. They are famous for burning people. Thankfully, I was able to leave after, I think it was after Justice League. Apart from that, my department, the CFX department, it was just great. Even though MPC, like the management was not great, my department, they were trying to make sure everyone was happy, that everyone was healthy, that people were not burning out. So all the effort they made, make things way better.
That's something really impressive, actually. I really like to work in a place like that, even if I'm burning out.
Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely. So MPC is a great place to start, and that's a story for many that works in the VFX industry. At the same time, it's not healthy to do it for a long time. I think that's the takeaway from it, because you can do this, you can do VFX, and you can do top of the line VFX without learning people. That's the main issue with MPC, that they don't know or they don't care about that. So yeah, it's a big theme of conversation. It's a big topic that we literally could talk for hours about it.
Okay, let's go to the next point. What do you use right now? What are you using for producing things like the Spider-Man into the Spiderverse or even Avatar? Are you still using Maya? Can I do something with After Effects or even Premiere Pro? Or
so that depends on the studio where you work. Something that is important is it doesn't matter what software you use, to an extent. That's how true. Because the idea is that everything you learn, the concepts you know, you will apply them to the studio where you're gonna work. Most studios use Maya as the main software, but also most studios have their own tools or software inside Maya. So for example, in MPC, the tool to create the hair, which is called grooming, is a tool that MPC developed, because for them it was easier to develop something that will adapt to them. Weta, for example, the software we use is called Loki, like the demigod or semi-god Loki. I don't know. Yeah, like Loki, like the guy from Marvel, and it's impressive. It's one of the most impressive. Probably was one of the reasons I joined Weta. You can do many things. Basically, you can drop a character with hair into the water, and it's gonna come out dripping water from here. It's one of the most impressive things I've seen. There are many things you can do with software like After Effects. I think there is a guy called Andrew Kramer. I still remember his name. He makes great After Effects tutorials. Like you can do visual effects there that they can be good enough for probably for TV. It's impressive. Of course, there is stuff that if you want to do it better and the way that is supposed to be done, you need to use the right tool. It's like the hammer versus the, I don't know, like any other tool. If you want to, the screwdriver, you need to use the right tool. For example, Houdini. Houdini is huge in the industry, and the main idea behind Houdini is whatever you do, if you want to do, I don't know, like a building, the idea is that it's non-destructive, so you can change the windows or change anything, and the building is not going to be broken after you change the windows. Houdini is one of the most impressive piece of software available to the public. And I actually had a talk with a festival. It's an animation festival in Táchira, actually, close to Mérida.
What?
Yeah, they're called El Ojo Iluso. I had a talk with them. I was doing a presentation like a month ago, I believe. Could be a week ago, I don't remember. And I was showing Houdini. Basically did a chicken running, crashed into a wall, and it became cubes, and the cubes were falling. That's the stuff you can do with Houdini, and I was explaining how flexible it is. It doesn't matter what software you use. I think the principles and having a good eye are important. I've seen people doing stuff in After Effects that looks like 3D, and it's 3D, and it looks great, but it's After Effects.
You won one Oscar for Best Animated Feature in the 91st Academy Awards for Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse in 2018, and you won one Golden Globe for Best Motion Picture Drama in the 80th Golden Globe Awards. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I think something important to mention really quick is that the Oscar for animation features and the Oscar for VFX is a team effort. No one specifically is gonna get the Oscar for this person had it. Now, also it's important to mention that for animation features, the story is key, because there are movies that look great but the story is not that great, so they don't get an Oscar. That was an incredible experience. I think Spiderverse, it created a point, in the animation industry, showing that new things can be done. It's risky, of course, and it's a lot of work. The amount of work we have to do in that movie was impressive. And the challenges, because one of the biggest things from that movie is that the animations, instead of being in one frame after the other one, sometimes the animation was in twos or even threes, or even in one sequence, in one shot, the character animation would change. So the variable frame rate was definitely a challenge for animation, simulation, rendering, everything. So yeah, I mean, it was a great experience. I'm really grateful for being able to work in that show. Really cool shots in there. I think one of the most tricky shots in that movie is when Prowler he grabs Miles on top of the roof, and after they talk for a few minutes or a few seconds, the Prowler pulls Miles' mask down. So that was tricky. When I tell you tricky, it was hard because the mask by default, the model was not made to go down, and because he had different masks, so I have to do different simulations. And then how do you, because the Prowler has like a big glove, how do you, with those gloves, how do you grab a mask that is so, it stinks, it's cloth. Spoilers alert, yes. He's not bad.
We were talking about that already.
Yeah, bad is is relative, and that's what makes that's one of the things that makes Spiderverse cool, is that characters are not one left or right. It's more they're not one-dimensional. So yeah, I mean, many challenges on that film, definitely.
Okay, wow, that was so incredible. I can't do it. Give me just 2 seconds to come back. How do you prepare yourself to create all these different characters? Because you're an expert on the body and the skin and the hairs.
The name of what I do is technical director. I don't direct anyone, but a technical director's job is to solve problems. And there are many types of technical directors. There are one for lighting, anything relating to lighting. Mine is related to the formations, or what's called rigging and simulation. So for example, at Wera, the creatures department is divided into the formation or rigging, and then the cloth and hair. I'm on the cloth and hair, but sometimes I blend into the other department as I do stuff from the other department. I think the best way to prepare for that is knowing a lot about Maya, because you're gonna change challenges that are just weird. You need to know a lot about the software and in 3D in general. That's stuff that comes with time. I have a background as a 3D generalist, basically doing whatever. So that helped me a lot. Definitely helped me a lot to grow quicker. Related to rendering, on Spiderverse, I did a tool with Python to basically create wind with a deformer, but based on rendering. It's a really long story, and there is a lot I cannot say because those studios basically own the tools. But basically, through rendering, which is not related to simulation directly, I was able to do something to create wind. So having that background definitely helped me a lot. Every day, every single day, helped me a lot.
I think that I can translate some things to marketing. So one of the things that I can translate is the softwares that you mentioned. That different companies have different softwares. I will say something like CRM. So we have the CRM, which are the typical Monday or I don't know, Hotspot, and different companies created their own softwares. So it's something that you mentioned that every company works differently with softwares. And regarding do a todero, I'm gonna call it. Sometimes it will be something like me that I study digital marketing management, but usually I will have to do like community manager, which is just handling social media, which is not exactly related to marketing, but because I understand somehow social media, I have to do things like that. So I think that is that related to what you're saying?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I think it's the same example.
You always suggested that observing and practicing and following the best of the industry is what we have to do if we're aspiring to have a career as an artist. Can you give some detailed examples what we should be doing? For example, there are some cameramen that they train on gyms running with the cameras. What would you suggest? Something crazy?
What I tell people that ask me, hey, I want to get into the industry, I tell them first, it's a lot of work. Like you need to sacrifice something, and that something might be time with your family, might be money to buy something, I don't really know, like software, probably training. But my main advice is to basically see the work from, especially if you're starting, from other students from the big universities. Field Academy, Namong, any big university. You need to see the work from the students that are coming out, because that's what's gonna tell you, okay, that's the baseline. That's how good you need to be to at least compete with these people, right? It's definitely not easy. Then, on top of that, you need to remember that if you're in a country that doesn't have the animation industry, and and their passport is not that strong, you need to be even better. And I know it could sound bad, but that's how things work. Train your eye and see things from other people, from people that are doing something great. And I know that sounds confusing, because it's hard to know what's great and what's not when you're starting. And the only way to know that is just watching stuff. Just watching stuff and train your eye. It's something that only comes with experience. It's a long process. You need to spend a lot of time trying and trying. If you don't have the curiosity to see, oh, well, what is this tool about? What happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? I think it's gonna be way harder for someone to make it. You need to have a lot of curiosity and try things. You need to try to have fun. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy. I have to say really quick, studying in an university that, in another country is definitely gonna help you, because for a visa application, if you find a job, it helps that you have a degree from somewhere else or from somewhere. Definitely helps. Quick story, I got a visa denied from Germany. Basically, I applied to a job. They make me, Germans love tests and paperwork and complex stuff. So I applied to the job, they make me do a test. I passed the test, I did like a document and I did a lot of things. They want me, but my visa was denied. Because at that time, I didn't have, my degree was not there yet. My advice about that is that having a degree for visas, anything related to visas, is gonna help a lot.
About the future, have you ever thought producing a film or a short for Venezuela or in Venezuela?
So that's a really good question. Right now, I'm deciding what I'm gonna do with my life, apart from keep doing what I do. There are people in Venezuela they're doing a show called Cambur with K. I admire what they're doing. They basically did a pilot. They're trying to find financing to do their show. I would love to find the time to do something like that, but I will definitely not do it something for Venezuela specifically, because I try to think more globally. So if I try to do something, it could be related to Venezuela, but more universal, if that makes sense. Because it's fine if you want to do something for only for the art, and that's good. But I always think about the two sides of a project related to art. So because there is the art and there is the money part that you need to take in consideration, because things have a price. It could be time, it could be money, it could be software, it could be anything, right? So I definitely think in the future, I don't know when, probably in the short future, I'm gonna start doing something. I just need to settle down a little.
Are you coming to the British industry? Are you doing something in the UK, or just you think that Hollywood is the cost of your career?
I think, I don't know. Like, it's hard to say. I will never, especially in this industry. This industry is volatile, really volatile. Something that happened to the UK industry related to VFX is that with Brexit, things are a little tougher for recruiters and studios to bring people, because things are changing. So it's hard to know what's going to happen to the UK VFX industry. So yeah, it's for now it's hard to know. I hope that for all my friends that I have there, that things get better, because the VFX industry is always chasing tax rebates, and that's a big topic of conversation.
I see. All right. This is a wrap out then. So just share a scoop if you have any of the upcoming projects, and share a message for my stereo audience.
Yeah. Currently, I'm working on The Last of Us Season 2, and I cannot say anything, like literally anything. If there are stories of people sharing one small thing, and they got fired, and some of them got persecuted. So it's definitely, they're really careful with their content. I think it's gonna be a great show. I love the first season. I love the games. I love that they're story heavy. So definitely it's gonna be worth to watch. It's definitely a challenge, it's cool, and I'm really enjoying.
Brilliant. And can you say where can we find you?
Yeah, I mostly post stuff on Instagram. My Instagram is osmeldu. It's like my name, Osmel Du. I plan to keep posting stuff related to VFX. It's just that right now it's summer. I'm trying to enjoy it, but soon I'm gonna go back to keep making videos.
All right, thank you. That's all.
All right, thank you.